Shrink Different with Dr. Wolf, the change agent.
Well, good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening. Out here in California, the sun is just setting, 5 o'clock. It's cold around the country. It's chilly for us. It's 57. I've heard people say they die for 57.
Yes.
That's Mr. J. I'm Dr. Steve Wolf, clinical psychologist, here to shrink different. And the idea is to create a space here for some intelligent conversation and stimulating conversation with a psychological bent. And we include story time. I like to tell a story, a teaching story, which has a theme that allows us to understand the psyche a little better. And then we're going to end the show with a new segment today. We're going to call it It's Change Time. And I'm going to lead you all at the end of the show through a process to help you begin to change something that you want to change in your life. Because the name of the show is Shrink Different with Dr. Steve Wolf, the change agent. So I'm going to stand up to my name. Let's see. The topic of the day is anger. Anger. Now, I happen to have been working with anger specifically for the last 7 or 8 years. And I developed an entire program, and I put together what I refer to as the Wolf Training Institute. And I train people to teach this methodology. We have a group of veterans that I taught in, these were peer leaders, peer trainers in the Vet-to-Vet organization here in Los Angeles. They're now presenting the class at the public library at no cost to veterans and their families. If you go to my website, tamingyouраnger.com, you can see a video of a training I did in an inner-city school, mostly black and brown kids who had not made it in the regular school system. And we have them teaching the method. By the end of the 6-month training, some of the students were teaching the corporate staff of this continuation high school system. That was wonderful. And if all goes well, I'm very close to starting the program now and teach an entire inner-city school emotional intelligence. We're going to teach them taming your anger with emotional intelligence. Because we figure if we can help even some of these kids grapple with their anger and increase their emotional intelligence, which, by the way, emotional intelligence will be the topic of next week's conversation. So I'm hoping to begin that in January. There's a lovely young woman who's going to do some research. We're going to document the change because my vision is to teach emotional intelligence as basic curriculum in modern education, and that includes self-control. So taming your anger is part of that. So I've been working with anger a lot. As a matter of fact, today was, this weekend I finished a whole new product. I'm going to tell you about it later. By product, I mean training program with a money-back guarantee. I want to invite you, please, to join with us in this conversation. So far, they say teacher with no students in class by himself. So here I am by myself. And if you would reach out, give a phone call. John, Mr. J, will give you the phone number. You want to do that?
Yeah, the phone number to call in and talk to Doc Wolf is 405-316-8964. And you can also get us on Skype at TFOK Radio.
So if you would call in or Skype, I'd love to hear from you. At some point, I'd like to interact with you. We had a young woman last week who asked a question. I attempted to answer it, help her out. Because I want this to be an interactive, dynamic show, but I want it to be different, shrink different. Shrink different, you know the old saying, a head shrink or a psychologist. By shrink different, I mean it's a way of understanding ourselves and emotions and how we function in a different way without necessarily relying on the idea that psychology is to fix problems. People are problems, so they have to go to a doctor to fix them. This is different. This is just about education. It's about educating everybody. People don't get educated in terms of what is anger. Ask yourself, what is anger? There it is. What is anger? Say it out loud. I like people to say things out loud. Anger is an expression of something. What is it an expression of? It's definitely an emotion, and it's an emotional release, and it's often experienced as an attack. It's an attack. But what is anger? Because when people are angry, they feel very self-justified. Because I'm pissed off at you, just because I'm pissed off at you, I should be able to shoot my mouth off. Based on what? Based on what? Maybe fear. Because obviously all the pain in our country, violence, oh my God, domestic violence, not to mention the regular fucking lunatic that's showing up with an automatic weapon somewhere. So yeah, anger. We have an angry culture. Now, there is plenty to be angry at. That's not the issue. You can't help being angry. Let me give you some building blocks for emotional intelligence. I've gone over these before, but it will help to understand what anger is in the first place and how I teach anger. I gave a talk in May to the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists in Sacramento. And the name of the talk was Disarming Anger in the Therapy Situation, and I was in front of a couple of hundred therapists. And the idea is to recognize your anger in such a way that helps you give it up and get past it. Because really, what's important is not that you're angry. What's important is what lies beneath your anger. That's what's important. So, for instance, when couples come to me for couples work, therapy, because that's what I do. That's my day job. Of course, they're pissed at each other. But they know that. You don't have to go to a shrink's office to be pissed at your spouse. The real communication that allows for understanding and a sense of being seen and healing, and that increases the love. The real communication is beneath the anger. So let me back it up a little bit. So we have a couple of the building blocks. You can go to tamingyouраnger.com, and I have a ebook called EQ 101, Emotional Intelligence 101, Building Blocks for Emotional Intelligence. You could get the book, and it has exercises in it, because it's designed to help you to develop your emotional intelligence so that you can become emotionally smarter, believe it or not. Because emotional intelligence is now like intellectual IQ that stays fairly standard throughout your life. If you're a really smart baby, a really dumb baby, you'll be smart or dumb throughout your life. That stays fairly constant. Your emotional intelligence, which is an intelligence, this is an intelligence, that can be developed. You can get smarter. Isn't that amazing? It's just a brand new field, and I'll get into that more next week. Okay, so what is anger? First of all, you have to understand that anger is an impulse. What is an impulse? It's an emotion. What's an emotion? Let's back it up. So you have three brains. We've gone over this. You have a body brain called the reptilian brain. It's primitive. It's breathing you right now, beating your heart, regulating your temperature, telling you you're freezing your ass off or you're very comfortable. That's your physical brain. It's for the limbic brain, for the body. You have what's called the thinking brain, or the neocortex. That is allowing you, hopefully, to make sense out of these words and sounds coming out of your, whatever your system is. I was going to say stereo, your computer. Helps you have memory if you're not too stoned. Helps you have imagination, mathematics, all that stuff. That's your thinking brain. Okay, everybody knows about those two. You have an emotional brain. It's called the limbic system. And here's the punchline. The emotional brain produces emotions the way your primitive reptilian brain produces heartbeats. You can't help it. You can't help what you feel. So if anybody ever says to you, don't feel angry, or you judge yourself, I shouldn't feel angry, I shouldn't do that, I shouldn't feel this, I shouldn't hate that person, I shouldn't love that person, I shouldn't feel this, I shouldn't feel that. Forget about it. You can't help it. It's a primitive. You can't help your heartbeat either. So, the emotional brain produces emotion. There are primary emotions, which go way back to when we were what I call the loony bin. We're all raised in a loony bin of some kind or another. So, primary emotions have to do with feeling safe or unsafe, loved or unloved, connected or alienated, or alone, isolated. These are primal, and they're very sensitive, and they're very vulnerable, and we learn how to protect ourselves so we don't have to feel those. Too painful, especially as little kids. That's where we learn to protect ourselves. One of the ways some of us learned how to protect ourselves is to use anger. Anger is a shield. It's a secondary emotion. Anger is a secondary emotion. Its primary job is to defend ourselves against re-experiencing a primary emotion. So there you are, and somebody says something to you, and really the primary emotion is you feel disrespected, or you feel unsafe, or you feel like you've been betrayed, or you feel like you've been abandoned, or someone you love has told you that they feel like you're not worthy. These are the primary emotions, but they're painful, and they're difficult, especially for men, to even know that we're experiencing them. To express them is a whole other thing. So what do? Remember, the emotion, the primary emotion, is an impulse. It's produced by the emotional brain. You can't help it if you feel sad, or like crying, or alone, or like a piece of shit, or something like that. You can't help what you feel. Now, the anger allows us to not even, some of us, we don't even know what we feel. All we know is, boom, 0 to 100, you're angry. You immediately feel angry. I'm angry right now. You don't even know why you're angry. You're angry because you felt a vulnerable emotion. You felt disrespected. You felt cut off, unheard to, unvalued. Fill in the blank. There's at least 25, if not 55 different feelings that we could put on those emotions. So anger is a secondary emotion. It's a shield against a primary emotion. It's experienced as a pressure. Now, although you can't help what you feel, I would like to inform you, for better or worse, you are responsible for how you express that emotion. It's pressure. It's energy. It demands to be released. It will be released. Now, either you can release it consciously or unconsciously. If you've ever been in a situation where you expressed your emotion and it was like spitting into the wind because you got it right back in your face and you were sorry you did it and all that other stuff, you see that your unconscious expression didn't serve you very well. If you're acting out, if like a cop stops you and you have all kinds of attitude, then guess what? The cop is more likely to do you harm, to fuck you over if you like. If you're polite and the cop sees that you're okay and you can handle your emotions even though you might be upset, you're much less likely to create a situation. Or if you're with a loved one and you say something and you see what you get back is their rejection or their hurt, maybe you don't want that to happen. So in order to do that, plus there's all the stuff we do to ourselves, anger directed against ourselves, which is a whole other story. So, anger is an impulse. because it's an impulse and a